The era of social change, 1960 through 1970. These are rough years, rough dates though. So I do want to talk about how World War II once again was a watershed moment in U.S. history for all of these movements and even more. Homosexual rights as well comes out of this stuff. So understand, like, when we talk about Latinos fight for change here, when we talk about African Americans right with the civil rights, when we talk about women's rights, when we talk about later on in the 70s handicapped people's rights, all of this stuff comes out of World War II, and it kind of piggybacks off of one another. And through the 1960s, you start seeing these movements, and they really start in 1940s, and you can go back and look at World War One for some of them. So anyway, moving on. As you read here, you see the decade. Within the decade, the Latino population rose from 3 million to 9 million. Reasons for this: 1848, the Mexican War with the U.S. 1910, the Mexican Revolution, and we have during World War II the Brasarios program. Temporary workers are brought up from Mexico to provide farm hands picking vegetables, fruits, because during World War II, a lot of our men were overseas fighting. So as you see, the need for farm hands throughout the 40s and the 50s. It officially ends with JFK in 1961. However, it will continue. Latinos still come up to this day. We have migrant workers come up from Mexico and pick our fruits and vegetables. So 1959, as you see, Castro, a lot of Latinos leave Cuba and settle in the Miami area, southern Florida area. We also have a lot of Latinos from the southwest U.S., northeastern U.S. migrating from Mexico into these areas. So in the 1960s, really in the 40s, they're going to face discrimination. And you can go back earlier than that. But, by the 1960s, they were fed up with this discrimination. So the farm worker movement, as their population grew, they demanded better wages, equal opportunity. Cesar Chavez, pictured in the bottom, and you're going to have a reading on him from later. They actually made a movie about him not long ago, a few years ago. He believed in improving the conditions for the farm workers, and he successfully unionizes these farm workers. As you see here, the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee in 1962, Chavez and Huerta established the UFWOC to push for better wages and working conditions. They believe in nonviolent protest, and in 1970, the grape growers industry finally signed contracts with the UFWOC for improved conditions for Latino workers. So, if you read through this, you'll see cultural pride. The UFWOC inspired other movements. Brown power, bilingual education starts to become available in public education. Chicanos, Latinos start calling themselves Chicanos, short from Mexicanos. They further push Latino heritage education in the high schools. Political power. MAPA, the Mexican American Political Association, worked with the two major parties in the U.S. They helped to register voters in 1962. And as you see here, they helped Edward Roybal win a House seat. So, and as you see in Texas, Henry Gonzalez. So, La Raza Unida, the United People Party, was established in 1970 as a third party, political party. Native Americans seek greater autonomy. They had suffered from severe problems of substance abuse, high birth and mortality rate. The termination policy of 1953, it was a failed program under Eisenhower. And to this day, Native Americans this is the ethnic group that has the highest suicide rate and highest alcoholism rate and drug use rate in American society. So we still got problems there. As you see in 1961 in Chicago, Native Americans meet to draft the Declaration of Indian Purpose, and they agreed to end the termination policy in favor of more self-determination policies. LBJ responded to them by including them in the Great Society. So, voices of protest, as you see, many Native Americans not happy with the slow progress. The American Indian Movement, AIM, it's often a militant group, self-defense against police brutality, and in 1968 in Minneapolis, they soon spread to northern and western states. They fought for Native American rights. If you look down here, AIM actually confronted the government on many fronts, and in 1969 they took over Alcatraz Island, and they claimed it was Native American territory by right of discovery, and offered $24 in beads and clothes, the amount the Dutch paid for it, for Manhattan. So, moving on. Russell Means, he was the one that led this Alcatraz takeover. He's one of them, but he, right on through to the end of his life, he marched on Washington, the Trail of Broken Treaties. He protested the U.S.'s many treaty violations, demanded the restoration of 110 million acres of Native American land, dissolved the Bureau of Indian. He worked to dissolve the Bureau of Indian Affairs because he said it was corrupt and inefficient. And he fights right on through to the end of his life. I believe he died in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, but he was a major activist in the Native American struggle for equality. So Native victories, although some actions led to violence and stalemate, Native Americans did get some reforms passed. If you look here, 1972, the Indian Education Act and the Indian Self-Determination and Educational Assistance Act. It was the right to educate. It's the right to educate their kids on their own terms, and they can add their own culture. Courts gave some Indian lands back to Native Americans, and in 1970s and 80s, as you see, Indians in Maine, Massachusetts, and South Carolina were able to win settlements, legal recognition for their tribes. So women in the workplace. By the 1960s, 40% of women worked for wages. There was wage and job discrimination. It's ignored until Kennedy appointed a commission on the status of women. In '63, the report sent to Kennedy exposed women were paid less, seldom promoted, regardless of education or experience. So this inspires women, of course, from there to get involved. And they get involved with the anti-war movement, social reforms movement. Women were given lesser roles. When women tried to bring up these inequalities, they were brushed off. So women formed small groups in these movements, and they began to talk about women's rights. They discovered the discrimination was basically the same for them. So in the 1960s, you get the women's rights movement that forms. And women were coming together to fight for their rights, influenced really by this lady who was a happy homemaker. She publishes a book called The Feminine Mystique. Her name was Betty Friedman, and it captured women's discontent all over the nation. So out of this book, Women Create Now. National Organization of Women is still in existence today, and they fight for women's rights. They fight discrimination. Some people thought it was a fluke, or some people thought that women's rights were a fluke. However, they're thrown into the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, and the bill does become law. The story behind this is a Virginia senator throws it in there because he knew that if he put women's rights in there with minority rights, African American rights, and Latino rights, that a House full of men or a Senate full of men would never vote this into law. And he was almost right. The vote was 51-50. And so that's how we get the Civil Rights Bill, and that's how women actually get their civil rights. In 1966, as you see, frustrated with the EEOC, Betty Freeman and others established NOW. and they pushed for child care facilities, better educational opportunities for women. They also put pressure on the EEOC to enforce its regulations for women in the workplace. It's a very diverse movement. As you see, women coming from all walks of life. In 3 years, the membership grew from 300 to 175,000. In 1968, in New York, a radical group of women protested the Miss America beauty pageant by throwing their bras, wigs, and girdles, etc., into what they called a freedom trash can, and they crowned a sheep Miss America. So women fight for equality. As you see, some gains and losses. Gloria Steinem, pictured here in the bottom. She's a journalist. In 1971, she helped found the National Women's Political Caucus, a moderate group, helped promote women to run for public office. 1972, Congress passes a ban on gender discrimination in educational programs that receives federal funding. Also gave the EEOC expanded power to enforce gender discrimination and gave parents tax breaks for child expenses. Roe v. Wade. Now and other feminist groups back this right for women to have an abortion 3 months into their pregnancy. This is still a deeply divisive issue. The Equal Right Amendment. In 1972, Congress passes the ERA Amendment, originally introduced in 1923. It had to be ratified by 38 states, and it was needed. It was needed to ensure equality for genders. Others, though, thought it would lead to trouble drafting women, same-sex marriages, and a friend on homemakers' rights. Actually, this lady right here, Phyllis Schlafly, she opposed the ERA, and she led a successful campaign to stop the ERA from becoming law, being passed as an amendment into law. In 1977, there were 35 out of 30 states, 38 states needed to sign it. However, in 1982, the amendment's deadline was reached and no other states signed the ERA, so it died. We have seen a lot of the ERA come into existence through laws, though, throughout the past 40 years, 30, 40 years. So we have same-sex marriages now. Women are really pushing to get that equal pay. Keep in mind, women are still paid 23 cents less an hour for the same work they do as a man in 2020. So they're working to get that closed. As you see, the movement's legacy, the movement had an impact on education, employment, and politics. Today, women have careers, jobs. They run for political office, and they hold political offices. These things were unheard of in the 1960s. So we'll pick up with counterculture on the next slide, on the next part.